Welcome to The Relay, presented by Lexiamica, the #1 attorney referral network. I'm your host, Gabriel Stiritz. The Relay is a show for law firm owners and the C-suite at personal injury, mass tort, and other plaintiff law firms. Joining me today is Michael Mann, lead strategist of the legal vertical at Scale Marketing. Scale Marketing is a boutique full-service marketing firm providing big agency services to small to medium-sized businesses. Michael, it's great to have you on the show. Today, we're talking about moving from passive marketing to active marketing through testing and optimization. There's more data available today on every channel across TV, radio, digital, social. The question is, how do you get that data? And even more importantly, how do you leverage all of that data to improve your business through testing? I had dinner with Michael recently, wanted to sit down with him and learn more. It was a fascinating conversation, and I think it'll be beneficial for you, our listeners, to understand what's available today. This is changing dramatically and rapidly, and it even affects traditional media channels that you might not be thinking about. So, Michael, great to have you here. Let's dive in.
It's great to be here, Gabriel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michael, listen, you are working with some of the biggest names in plaintiff side legal. This is one of the things that really impressed me when we sat down was that you haven't been doing this that long in the legal space, but you already are working with some of the biggest players and helping them grow rapidly. So, really impressive work that you're doing. And one of the things that you're doing is helping law firms to iterate toward better growth in their existing marketing spend. So just kind of like give me some of the background on where you're coming from. And I would love to hear, even from more of an outsider's perspective, what you saw when you started moving into the plaintiff legal space.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So Gabriel, thanks again for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been in marketing now for 25, 30 years. And so you have the advantage of perspective and space to kind of look back. Even if you go back 5, 10 years ago when you were doing an ad campaign, you were building it based on the available data relative to television, radio, whatever the case may be, even paid search. And you'd put it in place and, obviously you hoped it worked, and you'd kind of look a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, and how's it going? Maybe you make a change or two. That's really not the pace of marketing business today. And I think the word you used is really the word that I focus and key on with our clients, which is iteration. I mean, there's no set it and forget it. You're not doing monthly meetings anymore. Sometimes you're doing, daily meetings where there's such a major influx of data. Consumer habits are shifting at breakneck speed, and all these various digital tactics, they have so much more of a wealth of data to understand what's working well, what's not. And so that old set it and forget it, I kind of look at it as passive marketing, placing an annual buy, letting it do its business and kind of seeing how your year went. To me, that's a thing of the past. It's really, you have to be a passive marketer. You have to be in it with the data and really asking questions. Is this working? What's my hypothesis? What should I test? What's the next thing that I can test to help make this better? And I think those are the questions that we try to ask with the various clients that we have. And I think that's yielded. I think there was a second part to the question.
No, that's great, and I'll jump in. So, what kind of growth are you seeing with your clients? Like, before we get into like what the strategies are, like what kind of growth are you like with the lawyers you're helping in the space? What's the proof is in the pudding? What's happening here?
Yeah, we're held to account on bottom line case performance. So you look at case volume and you look at average cost per cases. We're held to two standards. Growth, we're seeing on the low end, 20, 30, 40% year over year growth for the 4, 5, 6 clients that we work with on an ongoing basis. Very rarely do we see a client that does not have double digit growth. And usually if we see in a month or two that that's not happening, we can identify the reason why and help them kind of optimize to it. So I've got clients.
And is that growth commensurate with ad spend increase? So is that like double digit growth plus double digit increase in spend, or are you getting better cost of acquisition?
We're getting better cost of acquisition. I think it goes back to that iteration phase of looking at where are they coming from? What was their marketing? Who are they targeting? What were they buying? How are they buying it? And kind of doing a full dissection of it and understanding, were they buying the right target? Were they getting the right impressions? And so what we've done is just kind of take clients' current marketing, pick it apart, like almost like you take a car apart, pick it apart, look at it piece by piece, find the holes, fill them. And then once you do, you kind of look, okay, how'd the competition react? What's our next move? What's our next test?
Yeah. Okay, great. So you're definitely seeing actual growth. So you're optimizing on ad spend, creative, Let's talk about the baseline. These guys, have they been kind of doing the same thing? Are they already grow? Like, are you coming into someone who's at a steady level of scale and then helping them, or are you taking an existing growth trajectory and making it steeper?
That's a good question. I think we've had a lot of success with companies and firms that have been in market, Gabriel. Like they've been doing TV advertising for 5, 10 years. Maybe they've been doing paid search. They've had some success, but there's a lot of room for optimization and growth. They don't know what's behind the scenes of what the television stations or radio stations are pitching or presenting them, or are they really getting the impressions that they purchase? And I think, so to your question earlier, we've seen a lot of double-digit growth with just maintaining budgets and just optimizing. Now we're 2, 3, 4, 5 years in with some of those clients, and we can't optimize that same budget anymore. You start to hit diminishing returns. So we are seeing clients starting to take their budgets now that we've kind of worked them through a series of optimizations over the last.
Yeah. So two things, efficiency is when you're trying to get the same performance, but for less expense. Productivity is where you're taking the same level of resources and getting more performance out of it. What do you like if you've got someone who's kind of stale, they've been doing the same thing for a while? Are you finding that you can more get efficiency? So you're actually like reducing the waste, or are you taking the same spend and optimizing for better results on that? Like, what's a better approach for someone who's like, yeah, my marketing has kind of been the same. Everybody's talking about case acquisition is going up. There's more competition in the space. Like, where the people that are incumbents, what's broken? Where, like, what are they doing that they need to fix right now based on what you've seen?
Gabriel, it runs the gamut. I would say no two clients are the same. And I think that's why you need a uniform assessment. I've seen clients where their search is off mark. I've seen clients where their search was great, but their TV was being bought off the wrong demographic, or they were paying the wrong CPMs. And I think that's why you really have to have a holistic view of all channels. Like, what's the overall symphony of media? What role does each channel play? And then you pick them apart and you look at them individually and you go, okay, how do I fix this? So I don't see consistent issues across clients. I'd say optimizing TV is definitely one of them. Integrating digital and testing new digital channels, which a lot of PI firms haven't done, that kind of helps boost productivity as well. But it's really looking at all facets: creative, data, media, CPMs, and really value engineering that.
Is it that they don't see all of the different pieces? Like, there's not a holistic view of the funnel, and then each of those pieces are then potentially misaligned. Like, is that, what we're trying to do here is come up with, like, what is it? Like, what do you need to look at if you're running a $1 million plus a year ad spend? Like, what can we give viewers to take away here and say, here's the thing that I can do to either test and see if I am doing things correctly, or figure out like the high level potential issues with my ad spend for this year? Is it lack of a single picture of the entire funnel that you're running into, and so you're not able to figure out what is going wrong? Or is it just that people aren't looking at it enough, that they're just like looking at it once a year, every 6 months?
I think they're definitely not looking at it enough. But even the data that they're looking at may not be center of the bullseye for them, Gabriel. So we've got clients that have been buying off of adults 18 plus. We have clients that buy, that's a target demographic for television and radio. Mm-hmm. And we have clients that run the gamut of who's their target. They don't know. And so doing a customer segmentation analysis and profiling their best customer, that's informative, because that starts to tell you who is that core customer that you should be trying to laser focus on. And then understanding, how does that person consume media? What channels do they spend the most time with? What's going to be the most influential? And so I agree that probably most PI firms are not looking at that holistic symphony, but I also think that you got to know your data. You got to know your market. You got to know your clientele. You got to be looking at what your competition's doing on an ongoing basis. And I think once you start to do that and you methodically look at your data and the market data, in all candor, as a data analyst on some level, like, the answers start to kind of present themselves. Like, you start to see, I had a client, I'll give you an example, Gabriel. We had a client, part of the segmentation analysis showed that they were under indexing for a certain ethnic group in that market. And so we saw opportunity. It was very clear, like, the market has 40% of this ethnic group in the market, and you're not reaching them. You're not speaking to them. And it's a blind spot. The law firm wouldn't know it. They wouldn't think of it. But the only way to get to that is by looking at your data and trying to understand who is that target customer. And And Gabriel, that ability for small to mid-sized businesses really wasn't robustly in place 5, 10 plus 15 years ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic, Michael. That's really good insight, which is by pulling the data together into a place where it's readable, you begin to see the patterns emerge. And I also hear you talking about too, it sounds like a lot of law firms, they think, well, I'm going to buy a high level demo spin, but I don't actually know what my ideal customer profile is because yeah, everybody gets in car wrecks. Well, that's true. But also, your creative is going to speak to a certain type of person. The way that you're buying media is going to hit a certain demographic, and you need to understand what that is and how that is going to play more effectively, so that everything lines up. That's great. Tell me about the differences in how you what data do we have access to now that we didn't have access to 4 years ago?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, the connected television, the DSPs, the demand side platforms, if everybody's aware, that's where a lot of the programmatic inventory gets bought and sold and transacted between publishers and buyers. And the wealth of third-party data segments, the ability to see click-through rates, conversion rates, lag, and cost pers, like it's just on such a granular level to be able to see this data target, how's it performing? This data target, how's it performing? Do I need to retarget to this group 5 times? Do I need to retarget to this group 10 times? How long does it take? And is this the right message to convert? And is that the right message to convert? I don't think. I do believe that bigger advertisers, Gabriel, had access to this data and knew how to decipher it. You think of the big brands spending billions across, the country and the world. Like, I think they had access to this data. I just think at the small to mid-sized business level, there just wasn't that access. And now, you get access to a demand side platform. There's so much more available data there that you can optimize off of.
Yeah. And just that's incredibly helpful. Did any of your customers, before you start working with them, how many of them were looking at this information and not just looking at it, but really using this to optimize their funnel? There you go. So yeah, I mean, that's huge, right? Like, if the billion-dollar companies are using this technology and this data to optimize their funnel, then lawyers need to as well. And just for clarity, no one in the plaintiff law space is really enterprise. And I don't mean to point fingers, but like, law firms in the plaintiff side, they're SMBs. Like, in the grand scheme of things, none of them are Fortune 500 companies. They're generally smaller. And so getting access to that information is one thing, but also being able to review that on a day-to-day basis is a lot harder than it sounds, because you got a million things you're trying to do. And to dive into complex platforms to review data and optimize is difficult. I was CFO, COO for a law firm for several years, and you set these dashboards up, and if you don't have a regular way to engage with those, eventually you just stop looking at them. You just start to kind of other things vie for your attention, and dashboards are fancy, but they're not a fire to put out. So I think it's really important to have someone who's also knocking on your door saying, hey, like, here are the numbers. Like, I'm looking at them. I care about them. Small things can often show a lot bigger issues. Dashboard, it's like the check engine light goes on. It's like, yeah, the warning light's generic, but you got to drill down and figure out what it is, because it may indicate, okay, well, the tire pressure sensor is broken, or it could be that, your oil's low and you're about to destroy your engine. So I think it's really important that you have someone who can help you set that stuff up, especially when you're running a law firm between 30 and 230 and 300 people, which is a really large range. But like, at some point, you have to outsource some of this stuff to someone who really knows how to look at these platforms, because it's not easy to interpret all of that data.
Gabriel, you're making me laugh inside, because so I had a recap meeting with one of my clients yesterday. We were recapping their performance in September. And on paper, they were up 45% in case volume. And you're sitting there and you're going, hey, most folks would be doing a little jig, they're excited. Up 45% is nothing to sneeze at. But, it's interesting, as I was walking through the presentation and kind of picking it apart and looking at some of the lead sourcing, looking at the paid search performance, and looking at, kind of looking under the hood at some of those things. I actually said to the client, I said, I know on paper this looks like a good performance, but I know we can do better, because I can see the holes. I can see where paid search, there's an opportunity, and here it is. I can see that this tactic that we're trying on radio, there's an opportunity to make it even better with radio. And so my point is that's the whole iteration. It's, it used to be set it and forget it. And okay, I'm making a lot of money. I'm getting a lot of cases. Everything's great. But even 45% up, I know with this client, as of yesterday, I know I can do better because the data is kind of shining that light. And so I said, like, we shouldn't feel bad about this performance, but let's discuss what we can do to fix these holes that we're seeing along the way.
Well, I love that, like, you're taking a first principles analysis. You're not just saying like 45%, that's amazing. You're saying 45% is a number that could either be fantastic if we've gotten massive market share and we're tapped out and we're approaching an asymptotic level of market cap, or that could be terrible because there is 3 times as much growth available and you're not even getting close to it. So I like that approach, which is to say, look, the number is fine, but we're not going to cheer until we know what that number means in the context of everything else that's going on. So this is fascinating to me, Michael, because I wasn't aware that you could get so much feedback on your radio and your TV spend. My assumption, it's incorrect, it sounds like, is that you could get that from like your social, your digital spend, but that you weren't going to get as much. The feedback loop wasn't nearly as tight on the traditional. So this is really interesting.
Well, let me be clear. I mean, the data available on television and radio is not nearly as robust as what you can get on the digital side. Okay, but there are signals. Obviously Nielsen, Scarborough. There's a variety of different sources of information that can kind of downstream tell you what's happening to the audiences, what's happening to the quality of the audience, the engagement, and so on and so forth. And so you don't have that real-time television and radio data. I want to be clear, but what we are seeing is with the available data, we are seeing TV viewership. Like we're seeing, it's like in the Nielsen parlance, it's called HUT and PUT levels, households using television, people using television, and across the country, market by market, those are declining. And that poses a threat to a lot of personal injury firms who have built their business on TV advertising. And the challenge right now is, as we're seeing those viewership declines, we're not seeing the performance declines, which is really interesting. So Nielsen's reporting a decline in audience, but we're seeing growth on the case side. So that's where testing comes in and really being intentional about how do I start to integrate connected television? How do I try to use it to fill the gaps of where, like even if my performance is still good with television now, in a year from now and 2 years from now, as that audience continues to erode, set myself up for that eventuality right now. Test and lean into it, understand how am I filling that gap. So, but I want to be clear, like the degree of data availability in digital and social and programmatic far exceeds what we have in TV and radio. But you have to look at whatever data is available for each individual channel.
Yeah. No, that's a great point of clarification. And it sounds like you're able to use that digital data as a proxy to inform what you're doing with TV and with radio as well. I mean, I'll say this over and over. They're not dead. TV and radio are not dead. They may be declining, but they are absolutely critical to acquiring cases and building a strong brand that's acquiring cases at a reasonable cost. I like that blended approach. So let me ask you this, because we're getting close to time though. Just tell me a little bit about like what's your approach to testing and iterating on creative? How quickly do you think you need to do that? Are you trying to A/B test? Is it more just iterative over time? Let's get some insight into that.
Where we're at right now, I mean, we do creative for our clients every 6 to 12 months, just depending upon their cadence. Obviously, you need to make sure that everything comes out of one central message, one creative brief, one voice. Where I will say we're getting more intentional with creative testing is on the digital side, being able to A/B test. And I know everybody's doing A/B tests, but really identifying how am I using this channel, like Meta, what role is it playing? Is it top line awareness? Or is it, hey, somebody's in market and I want to pull them through? And so really what there's retargeting messages that you can create. Like somebody's already gone to your website, they've raised their hand, there's some interest there. So what's the right message? You can't feed them the same message that got them there. It's like, what message do you show them that's going to get them to go further to your website or search or a branded search, whatever the case may be. And so to me, there's great opportunities to be had.
Fantastic. Michael, this was really helpful. Thank you so much for coming on. And I would encourage anyone, if you are dissatisfied with your marketing performance, talk to Michael. He's the real deal. I know the names of some of the clients that he works with, and they are not people who mess around. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring Michael on the show, is because there's a lot of people that say they do great work. But when you know who Michael works for, you'll understand that he really knows what he's talking about. So Michael, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you sharing insight with us.
Gabriel, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.